Hello, it's Alex S. Johnson, aka Small Bear, and it's Brittany Bitch, yeah. And we do a show sporadically, more often than not, sometimes not, called the Small Bear and Pickles Show here. I'm the founder of Nocturnicorn Books, which I started basically to publish my own books, like the Doom Hippies or a lot of books with the word doom in them because I tend to be not not a pessimist but a realist, and I'm a huge fan of Hunter S. Thompson. He A lot of his titles have doom in them, and my co-leader of Nocturnicorn Books is Aaliyah Celeste Williams. I'm in Sacramento, California. Actually, I'm in a suburb of Sacramento, California called Carmichael. And Aaliyah is in a very rural area of Michigan called Monroe.
Oh,
And Aaliyah and I have been friends for the last 3 years. We met in some Reddit groups for people who felt sort of marginalized and oppressed by society and asking some difficult questions about some things like government surveillance and spying and maybe some secret programs that they're doing to um, harm citizens, which nobody likes to talk about, especially if you're on the margins of society, or if you're an activist or a civil rights activist or a peace protester like we are, and in Aaliyah's family, that goes back generations, because they're
mhm.
Quakers. She was raised Quaker.
Ah,
And and my parents are raised me in the Vedanta tradition, sort of an Eastern mystical tradition, which is entirely consonant with things like my love of French literature, and because it's all a matter of trying to escape the boundaries that society places on you, right? And the expectations of other people, and discovering things like the philosophy of Heidegger, for example, or the poetry of William Blake, Allen Ginsberg, um, the explorations of a William S. Burroughs, trying to dislodge ourselves from this controlled mindset and discover who we really are. And so we have most recently written a book um, called Thunderstruck. And so this is our latest product that we've got for with Nocturnicorn Books. And we're hoping that anybody who sees this podcast will sort of be interested in buying some of these books, because that's where we're all about. We're not here solely to raise money for charities, but we want to share our love of writing, our love of poetry, and many of these poems are dark. It's called a dark poetry collection, not because we're particularly morose or somber individuals. We love to laugh, but things are very dark and bleak a lot of the time. And we wrote this with our close dear friend who actually helped to save Aaliyah's life. We'll talk about that in a second. Um, Two-time Bram Stoker Award nominated author Sandy DeLuca, who's a very renowned artist as well, and did the cover art for this book. The cover design was by a guy named Adrian Baldwin, who also does all our formatting. So I want to give a shout out to Sandy DeLuca and Adrian Baldwin, as well as saying that one of the of 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 Sandy's many um, sort of, I guess, merits or prestigious placements of her work is in the Brown University has something called the Harris Collection of poetry and plays, and that's where you have, of course, it's Ivy League school, right? It's also has the H.P. Lovecraft archives and all of his work and his correspondence. And it's the major H.P. Lovecraft collection, right? As well as the Harris collection, which has sort of original, first editions of, Walt Whitman, Edgar Allan Poe, and our friend Sandy DeLuca, and her book, which is called Burial Plot in Sagittarius, is out of print. And it's contained in there in the Harris collection. I myself recently, and this is absolutely blew my mind. I was contacted by Harvard. Um, the Widener Library at Harvard, which is their flagship library, acquired two of my books. One is called Skull Vinyl, and the other is called The Doom Hippies. So, I'm currently working on a follow-up to the Doom Hippies called Twilight of the Doom Hippies. And it's really dark satire. It's very politically incorrect. It's very raunchy and wrong. Um, but so, and we have as our guest a very, very distinguished woman. His name goes by the honorary title, I guess, of Dr. Jacqueline Dilworth.
Yes,
And I'll Doctor with a K, of course, which
yes.
which puts me in mind of some sort of mad scientist from a 40s horror film. Um, and Dr. Jacqueline Dilworth I'm just going to read this thing because she very kindly provided this to me, has been involved in creative endeavors throughout her life and is a producer, writer, filmmaker, and performer. Her day job is teaching theater to young adults. At night, at night when the laboratory lights up, right? And all the beakers and the tubes, and you can see them. Um, at night, at night, she produces the Jackalope Hour, a radio show with music and words from across the universe. I like the little Beatles Easter egg there. And Dark Party with a QUE in dark, a radio show that features dark wave. And we just had Tara Van Flower
Oh,
from
sure.
Lycia
Mhm.
and Typo Negative. So she's known for the dark wave, gothic rock, industrial, and death rock music. Of course, we love our death rock. We have do you know Valiant Ferguson?
No,
Valiant Ferguson.
the name is familiar.
She's
The-
kind of like an OG punk rocker. Oh, Leslie Spivey. Leslie Spivey from Penis Flytrap
oh,
and
her I know. Yeah, certainly I
yes,
know
yes.
her. Sure,
Yes, Leslie is a beautiful gal.
sure.
And gothic rock, industrial, and death rock.
Yeah,
She also produces video shorts, such as daily weather reports, along with longer short movies and feature movies. Jacqueline writes novels, poetry, scripts. Wow. Um, Very versatile for stage and screen, as well as translates works from French into English, which is amazing. Like the Oracles of Nostradamus, which was
yes.
written in Latin, right?
Oh no, it is written in sort of Middle French, early modern
Oh,
French, and
oh,
some
okay.
some of it's
Oh, right.
has
Miguel de Nostradam, right? Yeah. So,
yes, yes,
yeah,
and some of it is written in Latin, some of it's written in Greek, some of it depending on the quatrain. I mean,
yeah.
I have a copy right here, of course.
Of course,
My
yes.
my galley of it, but basically some of it was written in various kinds of languages to basically make it so people didn't realize that, oh, this is what you're writing about. We can't have you say this or that or whatever. So
Right,
there you
because
go.
that was during a period where you could be executed for that, right?
Oh, absolutely. The Inquisition would get very interested in you quickly.
And and it's such as daily weather report. Okay, so okay, blah 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 blah. Or Charles Baudelaire's Bad Flowers,
Mhm.
Les Fleurs du Mal.
Yes,
She is also is the mayor of, and this is fascinating to me, Nada Dada,
that's it. Yes,
an art movement that began in Reno, Nevada, of all places, and has
yes,
coordinated that art event since 2018. The
yes.
doctor um, has done her own art shows and performances since 2010, including the Medusa show, which sounds fascinating, in 2019, The Room of Silence. Wow. I'm going to send you to the Room of Silence, Pickles. In 2012. Sorry. And the Iris, I wasn't going to go there, but and the Iris Room in from 2011 to 2013. The Iris Room, it makes me think of the movie Suspiria. You know,
Sure.
yeah. So okay, I'm there's a lot to kind of break down and so the first thing that I want to discuss is the reason that we know Jacqueline is because she's a contributor to actually three of our books, two books that we're going to be putting out by the end of the month. One is The Junk Merchants 2, a literary tribute to William S. Burroughs. The other is White on White, a literary tribute to Bauhaus. And I'm rocking this is not a Bauhaus the band shirt. I mean, I think most people know if they know Bauhaus, they're aware that that David J. Haskins just shamelessly stole the logo from the art movement. In fact, they call him up. A lawyer from Bauhaus, you know, called him up from Germany. I was like, "What are you doing? Why are
I
you
believe it.
steal? Why are you stealing our shit?" You know, it's like, well, at this point, we are more popular than you. I think that was the only reason that Bauhaus, the band got away with some shenanigans is because at that point nobody had ever heard of Bauhaus the art movement.
Well, I mean, except for those people who had gone to art school or taken art classes and had the 1960s book, art book of Bauhaus. That was for a long time in my
Yeah,
bathroom, and I
yeah.
always really liked that. It's a very lovely book.
It is very lovely. Many of the artists associated with it, like Vasily
Oh,
Kandinsky,
sure.
I'm a huge fan. Miles van der Rohe,
Hmm.
so many. And my dad actually studied he at Yale. He took art from like life what is it called, life drawing, and
Yes.
also yeah from Joseph Albers.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
and also in English with Harold Bloom.
Oh, that's cool.
So he had a lot of. I mean he's some of his friends that he's known as friends and associates. I'm not going to make it too much about that, but it is really fascinating growing up and throughout his life. I mean, he was a close friend of Michael Ritchie, who directed the Bad News Bears, right? And my parents went to school with Gracie Wing, Gracie Slick, and Joan Baez.
Oh,
So
sure. That's cool.
right, so it's incredible. So since I was born, I was sort of surrounded by sort of music, and also one of his good friends who gave his first kiss with Terry Garthwaite from Joy of Cooking,
Oh, sure.
who who's I'm not I consider her. I've met her and I just think she's fabulous. I mean, she has that whole kind of scat singing thing where she has multiple microphones, and she sort of sings off herself, right? Like not like Diamanda Gallis, although I'm certainly
It's
worship
reminiscent, certainly.
yes, worshipful of Diamandagallus, hails to the
Sure.
Queen of the Darkness. And but she would play at the same coffee house when I was, growing up when I was a little baby, as Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker and Big Mama Thornton.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
right, so we always had these people in my life, and what was like I was thinking, there's so much to talk about in terms of, I guess I'm going to take one connector point, and I'm just going to see where it goes.
Sure.
Usually it seems like these connector points are all tightly tied in. So one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is in terms of influence, because as you know, being a scholar of literature, and you probably know more language than I do, but the whole idea of taking a a quote or a phrase or some concept or a turn, a trope from, Rimbaud, or, Baudelaire, Charles Baudelaire, or even, Jim Morrison or David J. Haskins, is that is the that I mean, we had this whole bad experience with John Shirley, but he did say about my book, The Flowers of Doom, that I had these reverential, sort of um, incantatory um, references. So I'm using references to Rambo. I used a lot of Rambo stuff as kind of incantations, and I think that was really kind of beautiful because it is magic. I mean, and certainly with Bauhaus, with David, he is he's a practitioner of occult, right? And practices, certainly. That's why he called, the subtitle of his book, "Who Killed Mr. Moonlight," is, benediction, black magic, and Bauhaus, right? So the Bauhaus, brand is certainly involved with some dark stuff. And it's sort of fascinating to me that they kind of break up and then they get back together and they break up. And sometimes it's Peter Murphy and David J. Haskins, and sometimes it's all four. But they always find a way to bring it back. And but I was thinking, as far as the people that are in the book. Now we have a really good friend of ours. His name is Carrie Lee Crum. And Carrie Lee Crum, when she was 14 years old, she and her friend, who became later known by her stage name of Joan Jett, um, they were they were friends, and they would sort of seek escape from their very, abusive family family backgrounds, and a lot of poverty. I'm not sure about Joan Jett. I don't know too much about Joan Jett, but I do know about Carrie stuff. She is from the South Bay of LA, that that area. And also their original bassist, Jackie Fuchs, right, was also would go out to the beach, like Huntington Beach, and surf and get away from everything. And they were both geniuses. I mean, they are, talk about Rimbaud, right? They're both extremely intelligent people. And, Jackie went on to great things. I mean, after she quit the Runaways, she went back to school. She she went to Yale Law School, which is, just think of the less than 1% of people who would survive that grueling regimen at Yale Law School. And with a young Barack Obama, she cleaned up on Jeopardy, and then she became an entertainment lawyer. And now she's designing, games. So the kind of based on her experience with the Runaways. So she's made a clean break from it. Unfortunately, Carrie Lee Chrome and some other who were then, young girls at the time were not as fortunate. And so, but I was just thinking, there's a lot of parallels between Carrie's story and a Rambeau, and as well as her being a 14-year-old girl who was there at the beginning of punk rock and was one of the most vital forces in punk rock. We don't think of Carrie Lee Chrome. We don't think of a young girl, a teenage girl, really, started punk rock.
But
And
that's the most punk rock thing, though.
it's the most,
That's the most punk rock thing,
it's incredible. Yeah, it's
certainly.
incredible. And so, and I don't think anybody knows this about the origins of Cherry Bomb. It's the explosive device. Okay, it's not, hello, daddy. It's not that. It's like, I'm 15 years old and no, no, no. And I'm wildly inappropriate, right? Um,
Oh, sure, sure.
it is,
You don't want your kid doing that, but it's cool if someone else does it. I mean, let's be real.
yeah, right,
You feel bad about like, hey, hey girl, you can't do that. But
right.
there it is. Although it's a
Yeah,
good song. It's a hell of a song.
it
Hell of a
is
song.
it's a great song. Unfortunately, it's an earworm,
Yes, it is.
and
You can play
also
it right now.
right, yeah, I get it stuck in my head. I also think that, well, as is well known, Sherry and all of them were huge Bowie fans,
Sure.
and because who isn't? I mean, so you have this kind of interesting chemical reaction. You had like post, this wasn't even post-punk, it was punk rock. And it laid the foundation for bands like, who's that you make me the pretty reckless, right? It was directly inspired by the whole look and sound and feel of the Runaways. I mean, just I mean, this helped me out, Jackie, because you're a music historian, you're a DJ, among other
Sure.
things. Who is like some of the bands that were influenced by the Runaways?
I would say that they're a lot more subtle because they started out very early, very much like 1974, 1975.
Yeah.
I would say definitely the Go-Go's, definitely the
Oh, yeah.
Bangles.
Yeah,
Um,
and in fact, I think Carrie was, I'm not sure if I should say this. Well, she was involved with some of that, but yeah, yeah, go ahead.
yes,
The Bangles, yeah, yeah, yeah,
definitely the
right,
Bangles. I mean, I out of the I would say to an extent the B-52s, although the B-52s don't get the credit that they deserve for various reasons.
right.
I'm going to say it. Can I say it?
We,
Homophobia.
you just said oh my gosh, you used the H word.
Sure did. Sure
We'll have
did.
to eject you from the show. Yes. So
Bye.
bye. Let us go. Yes. That is, yeah, we were just talking about, I mean, we're just talking in terms of well, actually racism
Oh, sure.
with our friend Frankie Biggs. Because Frankie Biggs was just on our show recently. I'm not sure if you caught that.
I didn't see that one yet. No.
Frankie Biggs. And he's more Aaliyah's friend. I mean, he's a friend of everybody really, but it's a really, really great guy. But he's a Grammy Award winning producer, and he's also a DJ, and he puts on these events where he's like does these festival shows. He's out in Barcelona, and he does
Sure.
huge shows, these huge events where people, like 20,000 people at a time, they come to party their ass off, and he's playing his own remixes of, well, he does a lot of Latin. Of course, he's in Barcelona, right? He does a lot
Sure.
of Latin stars. That's how he starts out because he's Hispanic. But he also works with people like Eminem and 50 Cent and Christina Aguilera and it's Britney, bitch. I just wanted to give a shout out to Frankie Biggs because we're going to have Frankie Biggs back on the show, right?
Yes. Love
And so
Frankie.
um, I'm not sure what my point was, but I guess
Well,
a
It,
shout
it,
out to Frankie Biggs, right?
sure, sure, but
Oh,
and let me
Great
racism.
TV.
Yes,
racism.
because if you look at early rock and there's a lot of it. In fact, if you turn back the clock far back enough, like say 100 years ago, basically there was only two types of music, especially if you're
Yes,
looking at in terms of the music industry. There was
right.
like legitimate classical music, art music, and then there was folk music, and the folk music depended on what race you were, because
Yes.
you could have jazz, you could have country, and jazz was almost invariably black, and country music was almost invariably white.
In fact, they called it race music.
They sure did. They
Mm.
sure
And
did.
you know the cartoonist R. Crumb?
Yes, of course.
Of
Certainly.
course, he does. Have you seen his well, of course he's famous for his being a huge old, old jazz records,
Oh yeah, all
collector.
those
And
78s. I mean, I remember the part of that documentary I watched that I
yeah,
cringed at was he's actually taking all like 10,000 78s from
yes,
San Francisco to France. And I'm just
yes,
thinking to myself, oh my God, I have like one crate, and like to move it like 200 miles is like, oh, I don't want to do this. But that
yeah.
like a library of thousands of pounds of records. Oi,
Right. Oh, oh,
crazy.
oh, oh, yeah, crazy. It's craziness. But yeah, he was when I was living in Davis and
Hmm.
he was living in Winters.
Ah,
So I used to see him and the late Aileen Kaminsky Crum pretty regularly, and they'd be like, that's our Crum. Oh my gosh, that's our Crum, right?
sure.
When I was like 14 years old, my dad took me to the Whole Earth Festival in Sausalito.
Oh, sure. That's a
Sausalito.
Memphis thing. Sure.
Sausalito.
Sausalito.
Do you know the movie what's the Lost in Translation
Yes, I've seen that
with
before,
Bill
certainly.
Murray? We are
Yes.
Sausalito. We're
Oh.
Sausalito.
Oh.
Uh, Bill Murray has a little thing with this woman who has this band she's there is takes place in Tokyo, and
Mhm.
she's performing with this band, and she says we are solito, and I love Bill Murray. So anyway, so he took me to this thing because he was a contributor to Whole Earth Review, which came out of the Whole Earth catalog. Bunch of hippies, right? And he was so he wanted to introduce me to some people like, Allen Ginsberg. I mean, he didn't know Allen Ginsberg, but he wanted me to see Allen Ginsberg. And it just so happened that was the day that Ginsberg was debuting Plutonian Ode. He
Ah.
read Plutonian Ode for the first time. And when I heard this thing, we were about a foot from the stage. It sounds like you have a baby there and you're abusing it, Pickles.
Are you talking about my cat? The one that's
Like,
meowing in the background
yeah, it
here?
sounds like you're an abusive mother of a toddler.
Oh my
It's
god.
like,
I think
I'm dying,
he's trying to see
dying.
he's trying to test what he can get mommy to do for him right now because he's
It's my
at that age. He's
Yeah,
at that
as my former friend, the author, um, Paula D. Ash said once, cats are assholes, and I was certainly, um, but
He's not
so
going, oh, I
yeah,
hope it's
and and,
loud.
and so
It's finding his
he
voice.
he took me to, and I was like so blown away by Allen Ginsberg that that set me off down a road to reading Walt Whitman. And my dad, because of his literature background at Yale, studying at Yale with Harold Bloom, he would have like Shakespeare around the house, and he would have like Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales. But I was sort of introduced to, in the best possible way, to American literature and the American Renaissance, by by first experiencing Allen Ginsberg in the flesh. And I think that's I think it's very important for people to go out there and see live poetry. To if you're, it doesn't matter if you're any good or not, right? Um, Rimbaud said poetry should be done by everybody, right? I mean, who cares, right? Fuck it. So I think I would encourage people um, to go out and see poets and read your poetry and participate in open mic things, as I regularly do. And the last time I did it in IRL, I read with Iris Berry, and who's still a good friend. And Ellen Mabey was this woman who kind of encouraged me to publish my first book of poetry. It was called the Death Jazz. So at any rate, this is all kind of relates. I mean, I think because Allen Ginsberg was one of the original beats, the OG beats, and in the Bauhaus book, because David J was, he started out doing cut-ups of William S. Burroughs style cut-ups, and that's how I got got him into the junk merchants. And so there were some friends of ours, Richard Modiano, who was the executive director of Beyond Baroque, and Amelie Franck, who was also ran Beyond Baroque for a while, and Mark Olmsted, who was a close friend of Allen Ginsberg, and basically Allen Ginsberg dubbed him as his successor, right? And I've got some more people on board with the Burroughs book, like Catfish McDarris. Is that name familiar to you? Catfish McDarris.
No.
He was a collaborator with Charles Bukowski.
Oh.
And so anyway, he was a fairly problematic figure, but I love him.
Needless to say.
Yes,
Needless to say.
needless to say.
Needless to say,
Move
and I
right
have a
on.
poem about it, but we can move on. I have a story about.
I would love
Uh,
to hear that, but I just wanted to kind of wrap this up because I'm meandering.
sure.
So my dad says, "Okay, come and meet our crumb." And so we go over, and he's so inside his own, it's like he's trapped in his own flesh. And we've got these Coke bottle glasses, and he sort of seems like he's from outer space. And so my dad says, "Are you R. Crumb?" He's like, "Of course." My dad, he asks obvious questions. Who else would it be? Looking like R. Crumb. And so he's like, "Yes." And then he says, "This is my son, Alex. I raised him with your work." And he says, "Poor kid."
Wow.
So I want to hear your story, Jack.
Well, I have a couple stories. I mean,
Okay.
I was thinking maybe that was a S crumb or maybe a T crumb, but you never know. I mean,
T. Crumb.
yeah. I mean, it's hard
I
to
see
say.
what you did there, and I
There it
appreciate it.
is. There it is. Well, I have a witty rejoinder to most things. So, talking about not Alex Ginsberg, Allen Ginsberg. So, I grew up essentially in Reno, although I've been all over the place, but I grew up there. That's kind of my hometown.
Yeah.
And one of the last times that Ginsberg was touring was 1998, as I recall. And basically, he stayed in an apartment in Sparks, and
Oh, wow.
what he did, like, to justify his existence and his staying at the place,
Yeah.
he created a mandala, and he
Wow.
was allowed to stay the night there apparently, and later on I saw this mandala, and it's quite a work. I mean, I'm sure by now it's been painted over, landlords over and over, but basically, if you can imagine, like, at least a 4x8 wall, at least it was no 8x4 wall, just this gigantic mandala that it basically took an evening for Allen Ginsberg to create. So that's an interesting
That
thing.
is.
Now,
Yeah.
no. So as for poetry, I did get my start doing a lot of poetry readings, and I just haven't been able to read a lot of poetry lately. And that's really the best way to experience poetry, because poetry is like music. It is a lively art. It's something that you read. It's something you sing. It's something that you say. In fact, it's the
Yes.
first art. Goes back from the goddess, and if you know about Robert Graves and
Of
the White
course, of
Goddess
course,
and
of course.
such.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, but it's the highest art. Although a lot nowadays, of course, people don't really say that it's the lowest art. No one, you don't think about it. You don't say it. At least in the United States. Be that as it may, when I do perform live, I always do 3 poems. I
Uh-huh.
do usually because I have so many poems of Baudelaire's, and
Of course.
I read one of his in my own translation, and then 2 other poems that are pertinent. So that's what I tend to do, because I only read 3 poems because I want to hear other people, and I don't want to stay up there and go on and on and on, because I try to say something that means something, and then there it is. I
Yeah,
let it
yeah.
ring.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I think that's beautiful. And it's one thing I don't like about these sort of canned open mics on a Zoom meeting or something,
Oh, sure.
where it's sort of like cattle, or it's like we're an assembly line, and just as a function of the media, the sort of like that there's a very kind of structured, formal experience which doesn't capture the full, you know, just the life of, as you say. I fully agree with you, Jacqueline. I fully agree that poetry is a living thing, and it does go back to the goddess. I was actually I asked, Danny Filth whether he was whether he knew about Robert Graves. Surprisingly, at that point, that was 1998, he had not, which, yeah, I mean, now, I mean, he has 2 master's degrees in English literature, so I'm surprised that he didn't know about. I'm sure he knows now, right?
Well, I hope so. I mean,
Right.
it's fundamental. I mean,
Yeah,
Robert Graves, if nothing else, for the White Goddess, but
sure.
I clavdivs. They
I,
made it
I
really. I
yeah,
clavdivs. Haha. I'm
I clapped this. Yes.
making a
Yeah,
bad joke,
yes,
but well, I
yes.
stole that bad joke, and
Yeah. Well,
I
well, it's like the band Converges, right?
exactly right.
They
Churches, exactly.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
But seriously, I Claudius, and almost everything, and of course, goodbye to all that, which is really underread and underappreciated. It's really
Oh yeah.
beautiful because it's his memoir of him surviving World War I
Oh
and
my
being in the
gosh.
trenches and just living, and it's beautiful and poetic and very sad.
Yes. Do you like Orwell? I mean,
Orwell is very good.
yeah,
I
yeah,
find nowadays his essays to be more interesting because I've read
yeah.
Animal Farm in '84, and
Right.
well,
Yeah.
Down and Out in Paris is really wonderful, and of course, Homage to
I,
Catalonia,
yeah.
great stuff.
I've reread. I think just for the sheer beauty of the language, and his reportage, down and out in Paris and
Oh
London,
yeah,
so
yeah,
many times, so many
yes,
times,
yes,
as well as, you know, um, Hemingway, A Movable Feast.
well,
I
sure.
just, you just cannot get anything closer to God, to quote Trent Reznor. They move me so terribly much. I'm moved by technique. I'm moved by the pinpoint accuracy of the language, and I'm moved terribly to the point of, um well, which leads me to, I was just thinking, as you're saying, the primordial relationship between us and language and sound is sonic, it's
Yes,
vibrations, it's material,
yes,
and it has the rhythm, right? And I
yes.
was thinking about Jarbo. As
Oh
Jarbo
yeah,
is
sure.
one of the few people who like Janis Joplin,
Mm-hmm.
Summertime Blues. Um,
Ha.
Jarbo is one of the few people, her voice moves me to tears. And I've just, her cover of the Blind Faith song, Can't Find My Way Home. I'm crying, it's just like, I love Jarbo. One thing that I adore about Jarbo is that she breaks down, she's very deliberately and consciously says, I'm going to break down the barriers between myself and the audience. So we're going to be completely committed to this, this, this performance. And I think that's something that Jim Morrison did. So Pickles is a huge fan of Jim Morrison. You know, could you could we talk a little bit about the Doors?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying before we started recording that I think it was Wallace Fowley, the scholar of Flambeau, actually wrote a book comparing both Morrison and Rimbaud, and like I certainly see a lot of parallels. But Jackie, what do you think? And then I'll go to Aaliyah Pickles.
I think more of specifically about of course when people are talking about the Doors, they're always thinking about Jim Morrison. They're not talking
Yeah,
about the rest of the guys in the band,
sure. Yeah,
who really they kind of put up with him and they kind of went with his trip. I mean,
right.
basically they weren't for the ride. They got the ticket, and I feel that he's overrated, but he's underrated nowadays. You don't really hear a lot about Jim Morrison, and I don't see, you don't see people around with T-shirts of Jim Morrison or posters, and like you turn it on the classic rock station, you don't hear the Doors much anymore, and so it feels like they're underrated now, and maybe perhaps there'll be a resurgence, and Ray Manzarek, brilliant pianist, one of the best pianists who did rock music ever.
Yeah, yeah. I was certainly thinking. Well, a couple of things that come to mind because I'm neurodivergent and I tend to go
Sure,
like that.
sure.
But we were watching the video that Tara Van Flower did of womb like liquid honey and trying to figure out what that vocal effect was. And I think it's a guitar effect. It sort of reminded me of Venus and Furs.
Oh, the drone then, the drone, sure.
Yeah, and that was kind of like this recurring cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds at first like this sort of sharp spike, like John Cale's.
Mm-hmm.
Is a viola or is it
It's his cello. John Cale
a
is one of my
cello? Yeah,
favorites,
right. Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
I will say.
John Cale. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he produced, as you know, um, I at least one album by Nico.
Oh, almost all of the ones that are her
All
best.
right, the desert and the Desert Shore, the Marble Index,
Yes,
which comes from Wordsworth, right?
yes, it
So
does. Comes from
the
Woodworth. Yes.
Prelude.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, there's a lot of a lot of stuff. Nico is problematic, but
Oh, genuinely, sure. She
yeah,
gouged people's eyes out, and she was very violent,
yes,
very violent.
she sort of lived in that kind of a sort of a half stupor where she would like sort of live in her bathtub with the lights out and these
Mhm.
black candles that would sort of gut her out, right? And
Yes.
she loved that. There's this famous photo of her on stage with Bauhaus, and Peter Murphy is having to kind of like lift
Well,
her,
prop her up,
prop
sure.
her up, right?
You,
Like
you,
like she's a corpse.
well, sure. You know the story about that? I mean, I don't know if you know.
I don't know actually.
So for a long time, Nico, she ended up living in Manchester of all places,
Oh,
and
really?
and so
Interesting.
she was performing and she would do shows. And she heard Bauhaus and she really dug him. She was really into him. So basically, she said, "I'm Nico. I'm going into the show." And of course, Peter Murphy was astonished by it, and asked her to come up and talk and perform. And I'll say that they had quite a show. And then I've heard said that she and he had quite an evening later.
Oh my
That
goodness.
Yeah, and then she came back later. In fact, if you listen to a press ejecting "Give Me the Tape," that
Yes.
CD has those songs that she did with Bauhaus. So
That was my first Bauhaus album
it
actually.
was
Yeah.
mine
Yeah.
too. Yes,
Wow, yeah.
mine too.
Wow, yeah. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but
It's all
it's
good.
it's all good. Like just like that sheer okay, so I think it's important to relate emotionally to music and to poetry because you get the entire experience that way. And I think it's like you have to be open to it and not be critical of yourself as far
Mhm.
as, do I understand this? I mean, there was this play called, have you ever seen The Gas Heart, Tristan Zara?
Well,
So it's this,
of course, I know Tristan Zara. He's,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the Dadaist, and I'm very much. I mean, a lot of Dada I know about, but the Gas Heart, I have not seen ever, staged. I mean, who would stage
yeah.
that?
Well,
But
I think like surprisingly at UC Santa Cruz when I was an undergrad, my friends who later um went on to um head up the Theater Artaud in San Francisco, Laura Shapiro actually put it on
oh
at
wow,
the drama department at UC Santa Cruz, right?
that's wild.
In about 1987. And
That's
actually, I was taking Dada and Surrealism with Professor Ruby Cohn
okay.
at the time, and she was the first scholar of Samuel Beckett, and she was also a friend of his, and she would visit him every year in
Oh,
Paris. So that was amazing, and she taught, she taught Dada and Surrealism and comedy, and so learning Waiting for Godot with Professor Ruby Cohn was absolutely fabulous. She was a really great person. It's one of the best professors I've ever had, and she was
oh, I bet.
really a good mentor to me. So, so that was a wonderful experience. We also had a writer in residence of Alan Robbe-Grillet was there at the time, and
Sure.
he showed L'année dernière à Marienbad at the it was a very small group of people because it's an Aggie school, right? So it was only like 25 people in the entire program, and we're all there in a room with Ellen Robbe-Grillet and showing doing a voiceover. This is like long before DVDs, long before VHS, long before anything. This is 1986,
Oh,
and
sure, sure.
he's doing like a live voiceover of
Oh, sure. A commentary.
commentary, a
Sure, commentary
commentary,
track. Sure,
a
sure.
live commentary track on one of the most important movies ever made. I mean, I think arguably a movie that inspired Stanley Kubrick and a number of other people. That like the tracking shots in Marienbad, you can
Oh,
see there's
sure.
a
Last year at
lot of
Marienbad. Yes,
scholarship
yes.
on that, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's and it leaves you with a question at the end. Well, there's all kinds of questions at the end of that movie, isn't there?
Yeah,
And are the good guys really the good guys? Are the bad
right.
guys really the bad
Bad
guys?
guys,
Who's who? Who's
right.
really who in the end of that movie? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a really I love the enigma of it, and I want to bring
Yes.
in Pickles because Pickles hasn't said anything. But 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 I think a lot neurodivergently, and I make sort of sideways connections. When I think of the enigma, I think of Giorgio de Chirico, and I think of his famous painting about the melancholy and mystery of a street, right? And that kind of just this wonderful, almost unspeakable quality that Dada has, that Dada art has, like Max Ernst, right? His bricolage work, right? Where you're just going, huh? And I like to have that wash over me as opposed to struggle struggle busting it with trying to understand. What do you think, Aaliyah? Like when you're looking at Dada art, because Aaliyah is an incredible artist. And she's an incredible artist.
Oh, thank
Let's
you.
talk about some Dada art,
Okay.
right?
Yes, Dada
Yeah,
art is
Dada art, right?
just it's hard to even describe, but
Yeah,
um I mean, I guess I would say that, well, we always talk about the fountain. as
Fountain,
being
our
like
remote,
one of
right?
the, well-known
Right.
pieces of
Our remote. That's
Marcel
Marcel
Duchamp.
Duchamp, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. But,
yeah. I love the fact that it's still controversial.
Well,
yes. I wanted to ask, actually, I wanted to ask you, Jackie, about
oh,
the
certainly,
Nada
sure.
Dada. Is that okay if I call you Jackie, or do you want
You
me to
can call
call you
me
Jackie
Jackie, sure.
Dilworth? Okay.
Well,
I
hi,
wanted
you're in
to
the show.
ask. Yeah, I wanted to ask about about Nada
You found
Dada.
it?
Okay,
I was
sure.
curious.
No, thanks, baby.
So
Did I
what
say that
nada?
right?
Yes, nada dada.
Okay.
Yeah. Well. I don't know that it's a going concern anymore. Unfortunately,
Mm.
because of I would say egos as well as the march of time. But basically, the whole notion was in 2008 there was a group of Reno artists who decided to basically circumvent the whole gallery system and the situation there. And what they said was, well, we want to put up a show. So at that point, there were a lot of kind of rundown motels and hotels in Reno because, Reno fell in hard times. And a lot of the old gambling places where people would stop and live and as they were living in Reno, basically weren't. They were being used mostly as flop houses for people who couldn't afford, your first, last, and whatever.
Yes.
And so basically, they were able to convince some people who owned motels and hotels to say, hey, we're going to do it this weekend, and we're basically going to put up an art show. The first place where that happened was the El Cortez Hotel. It's a dearly departed, unfortunately. It's been bought out by very bad corporate interests. And yes, I'm not going to mention them because they're bad corporate interests. Anyway, so basically, they had an art show, and basically, the whole thing is no juries, no bullshit. And basically, the whole idea was you get a room and do a show, and you do a whole thing. And quite a few of my friends made some astonishing art there. People did a live painting, people did performance, people did all kinds of stuff. And I was really taken with the movement, and I tried to continue it. But with all things, people's egos and ideas get in the way,
Right.
and time and tide. And I mean, I'm still the mayor of Nada Dada, but
Okay.
I don't think there's going to be any more Nada Dada, honestly.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I just wanted to find out some more about it. So,
Oh,
I
sure.
yeah, I kind of want to do something where this is something I've been trying to do for a very, very long time to get started. And I think there's a lot of potential with all of the artists, all the musicians, all the DJs that we have with Nocturnicorn. I kind of have this idea that it's almost a collective because
Oh,
one
sure.
of, one of the things that makes us unique is that I don't come from a background where I went into this with a very kind of structured approach to I'm going to be a publisher now. It was basically born out of necessity that I started publishing. And of course, Nocturnicorn is it's a unicorn. It's a very magical animal. It's sort of an impossible animal. It's aspirational.
Sure.
And the night I was born on Halloween, so I kind of love
Oh,
that nightscape quality, and it's sort of a dream, you know? Sort of like you project your dream out there and do a kind of like a sigil magic thing with a reality cut up, right?
yes,
And
absolutely. That's ultimately what it is. Oh, really?
and so I'm doing a number of collaborations with some different friends of mine, like Michelle Fairchild, and so we have actually somebody who's no longer with us, a woman who was a really dear friend of ours, who was a poet named Jordan Gallagher. That was her poet name, and she was worked with a woman who she was at UCLA. She was also at Cal State LA. She wrote um, Lithium from Medea, Kate Braverman. the novelist Kate Braverman. So
Sure,
she
I know the name. I've
yeah,
recognized her. Sure.
they worked together and they had this summer writing program at Cal State LA, and they started, and Jordan actually edited her novel Wonders of the West,
Oh,
as
sure.
well as her actually at one point they were affianced. Josh, his father was Damien Karras from The Exorcist.
Oh,
And so Josh something or other, he was in Near Dark and a bunch of movies like River's Edge and
I know River's Edge. Sure.
yeah, which was actually filmed here in Sacramento. So with Keanu Reeves and Dennis Hopper. And and anyway, so she was incredible poet, but kind of a junkie. So and that which is why she's no longer with us
Hmm.
because of fentanyl.
Ah,
But in her day, she wrote all these poems and she was constantly talking. Oh, she was a mutual friend of ours with Joe Pulver, the late Joe Pulver. And so, and I don't think Willem Pugmire so much, but certainly, Joe Pulver, right? He was such a good guy. And then, so she and he would go back and forth and do all these sort of collaborative poems. And actually, um, she also wrote a story about me. All all these pieces were never collected, and it's like when she died of under tragic circumstances of a fentanyl overdose in 2020. Basically, she we'd always talked because she was kind of dramatic and obsessed with death, and I I thought she was going to live forever. She was always dying of a Victorian, of a rare Victorian,
the
illness.
vapors.
The vapors. Yes,
The vapors.
she was so beautiful and so elegant and kind of a wonderfully flaky and just larger than life. You know the movie Real Genius
Yeah, sure.
with Val Kilmer? She was the inspiration for the Jordan character.
Oh,
Yeah, I
cool.
mean, it's astonishing. It's eerie to see that movie because that Jordan Cochran character is her. And so we would talk about her literary heritage and her tradition. And she died about 6 months ago or so. She
Oh,
started talking to me and Michelle simultaneously. And one of the things she does is she now this may seem like this is incredibly woo-woo stuff. I mean, this is like crazy stuff, right? This is a person who's no longer with us in, in the flesh, but is very, very much present in the astral plane. And I, I, I believe, and Michelle and I agree with this, that she's somehow arranging things that would otherwise be impossible, so that because she was so enthusiastic about stuff, and I begin to see kind of her handiwork when it comes to like my literally getting the man who wrote Bela Lugosi's Dead in my not one but two of my anthologies. How's that going to work out? Like realistically, right? It's like, okay,
sure.
Alex, yeah, I'm going to get David J. Haskins to write me an original poem, and
Why not?
it's not just I mean, the fact that it's an original David J. Haskins poem is just like insane, right? But it also contains references to Easter eggs to, you know, Oh Bela, Bela Zonde,
Oh, sure.
right? It's just incredible little poem, El Hombre Invisible.
So,
And yeah,
so where would I be able to read some of her stuff? She sounds fascinating, and I'm it's a shame I never got to meet her or read her stuff. Where
well,
can you read it?
that is an excellent question, Jacqueline. And so we're trying to put together a book one of our literary tributes it's going to be called Lacunae, a literary tribute to Jordan Gallagher,
Ah,
and we're trying to get together all the people that actually knew her, like the late, the widow of the late Joe Pulver, Catherine Pulver, and Jeffrey Thomas and some other folks, Thomas Broadbent, Michelle Fairchild, and I are trying to get that together, but that's probably not going to happen this year or in anywhere in the near future, because none of her poems were kind of collected. But
ah,
if you look her up, that there are references to her in relationship um, to Kate Braverman, certainly, and you
oh,
can
sure.
still find her LinkedIn page. So I will, if I could find any Jordan poems, and if Michelle, I'll ask Michelle if she has any Jordan poems, and I'll email them to you so you can read her for yourself.
I would really love that. I would genuinely love that, and
Yeah.
perhaps I could do some recordings of them because I do have recordings of all my Nostradamus and my Baudelaire, and
Uh,
I'm very happy to read
Oh
them
my
and do a
God.
recording
Oh
if
my
you
God.
want.
She would love that. I mean, Jordan is squeeing right now because she'd be like, yes, of course, this is why I arranged the meeting with Jackie Dilworth, and this is why we're here today.
Mm.
So she can read in her mellifluous, I don't know if that's the word, but
Yes,
her
it is. Well,
her
honey soaked.
honey soaked, right? The fabulous, you sound like, Kate Hepburn, right? Oh,
Oh,
yes.
certainly. Yes,
Kate
yes,
Hepburn, right? Oh, I
yes.
love Kate Hepburn so much. I mean,
Quite.
so Adam's Rib, right? Oh, she's so great. Betty
Hmm.
Davis. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
can we talk about what happened to the world of, you know, and my friend Catherine McGregor. What happened to the grand dames of theater and film? It's the pictures that got small.
Well,
Right?
it's technology
Yes.
because basically to have the sort of voice that I have, and it's a mid-Atlantic accent, like I was talking about. The
Yes.
reason why people had this sort of voice was when you're still working in theater and you don't have projection and
Yeah.
you don't have like microphones and such. You
Right.
need to be able to talk. The last person in the last
Right.
seat over
Right.
there. I mean, they need to be able to
Yeah.
hear you clearly.
Yes.
So that's why
Clearly.
mid-Atlantic
Clearly.
accent
Yes. Yes.
came to be
Yeah. Yes. And why is it called a mid-Atlantic accent?
because basically it's a combination of British, like British and American accents that are prestigious,
Yes.
and basically a received accent, which is the British version, and then I don't know, I don't know, there, maybe northeastern English in the
Right.
U.S. So basically, you can either have British or American. I tend to do American,
Right.
but it depends on certain words and vowels and the way you say.
Sure.
You're either dance or dance. Like
Right.
when I listen to Susie and the Banshees, Spellbound,
Yes.
which is my favorite song by her. At the
Me
end, she
too.
says dance, dance, dance. I
Dance,
say
dance.
dance, dance, dance.
Right. Yes.
So it basically it's in certain words you're either saying it the British version or the
Yeah.
American version. So that's kind of what Mid Atlantic accent is in like a nutshell, very small nutshell.
Very, very small nutshell. Yes.
Yes.
And if I had more people working with me, I would do more stuff. Like I would do even more stuff like I would do with Susie and the Banshees book. Maybe we'll do that.
Sure.
And I would love to have your contribution. Obviously, Sisters of Mercy. I was going to originally just do a goth book, but I got all these people, right? I got Jerbo and Carrie Chrome is an OG goth as well,
Oh,
which is
sure.
interesting. Oh, another thing that I kind of um I didn't know this before. So because I didn't know it before, but she when I say, "Oh, you're my big sis," and she says, "No, I'm your little sis." And I didn't realize that was a reference. That was a song reference to Little Sister. You know the song Little Sister?
Well, it's a cover actually. It's a cover
Yeah.
that Susie did, and I don't remember who did it honestly, but I know it's a cover, and yeah, it's a decent song. It's not one of my favorites on that album, but I know it's a cover.
I meant the Runaways song.
Oh, the
The
Runaway
Runaways song.
song. Oh, I'm
Yes,
talking about. See, I'm another
yeah,
place and thinking
it's
about Susie.
it's great. It's great. I mean, who wouldn't and why wouldn't you think about Susie? But yeah, so she always calls herself my little sis or little sister on a skateboard, which I
Oh,
didn't realize that's from the Runaway song, and it's not it's attributed to Joan Jett, but I wonder about that, right? Um, and just so there isn't really like this linear line of inspiration and influence. I think we're all
yeah.
drawing from this much deeper well that comes out of just being alive, and it sort of transcends time, right?
It
Time
can
time span.
certainly.
Yeah,
Certainly, but the interesting thing is, I find that a lot of young people, and like you say, as in William Burroughs, sort of a young people aren't reading as much. But then again, that's just my experience where I am. I think people are reading more and people are
Advice to
experiencing
young
more.
people, is that what you meant?
Exactly
Yeah,
right. You know
yeah,
that
yeah.
young people like that. But
Yes,
I say read more, listen to more music, go to a poetry reading. Get stop playing video games for a little bit. Although I do
yeah,
like
yeah.
those, but
Right,
do
yeah.
something else. Get with some humans, man.
Right, right, right. I agree, and it can be fun. It can be. I mean, I did some stuff with. I remember like in 1980 1987 or so. My friend Thomas Roche and I.
Oh,
Um, do you know Thomas?
yes, I do.
Oh wow, yeah, he's brilliant. You
He's a
know.
very cool guy. I don't know him personally. I've read his stuff. I know of him. I
Oh
mean, I've
wow,
never,
yeah.
I've
I
never
he
met him.
actually dedicated Brothers of the Night to me.
Oh, I didn't
Brothers of the
realize that.
Night.
Cool.
I was also in Noir Erotica 3
Oh,
and Master Slave, yes, on the slave part of it. And
sure.
Pickles has two copies of Master Slave.
Um,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow, I haven't thought
Yeah.
of him in a long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He actually wrote story. Well, he had a couple of things, and I mean, I would be um remiss if I didn't talk about Poppy Z. Bright, right?
Oh,
So
of course. Oh, yes. He's very brilliant. In fact, Lost Souls was very formative for me as a very young person, and
yeah.
I came to his novel there, my freshman year of college, which was really one of the first times when I was really out and I was
Yeah,
queer and I knew it, and I
right.
read
Yeah,
that book and it just
right.
spoke to me, and I sent Poppy a postcard, and he sent one back to me, and it was one of my treasured things. And basically, it was a postcard that was the Dali crucifixion of Jesus, and
Oh,
they are subgenius like I am, and he just wrote something brilliant, and I always really admired him and his writing, and he's one of the people. I mean, I can't say enough about Poppy Sebright and his writing. He's brilliant, and I've
he's
tried to
brilliant.
support him.
Yes.
He I try to buy his stuff. I try to help him out when I can and when I'm
Yeah.
able. And like I said, he's one of my favorite authors.
One of my favorite authors as well, and actually, despite the fact that when I first encountered him in the 80s and started well, I actually it came about that I was writing for a magazine called Dark Angel magazine in Melbourne,
Hmm.
and it was kind of one of the old 90s zine revolution, a kind of a gothic magazine that was they also had like Carpe Noctem
Oh, sure, I know
and
Carpe Noctem, and I'll throw out another one, Propaganda. That was always my favorite, along with
Propaganda.
Carpe Noctem. Yeah,
That was really good. And so I wrote for some of those, like for Gothic,
hmm,
for well, I wound up writing for Gothic.net,
sure.
and I interviewed Jeton Dimond,
Oh, sure, she's brilliant.
who's absolutely incredible, incredible artist. And
She
as
has an
well,
opera out now of all things, like this
yeah,
gigantic opera.
I
I,
saw that. I saw
I,
that. Yeah.
I didn't. I'll be honest. I just want to hear the music, but I didn't. So I didn't get the records. Oh God, I have so many records. I don't want to get more records. So I just got the
Right.
audio version. I
Yeah.
haven't sat down to listen to it because I really want to sit down and experience it because all her music and the music she did with Roz Williams, and I will
Roz.
I will go.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to
Rest
say
rest in
Roz
peace. right?
may
Yeah,
she rest in peace. And I'm going to
right.
say
May
that
she rest in peace. Yeah,
because I think that maybe Roz may have been at least gender fluid, if not genderqueer, if not transgender. But
sure.
I'm just, that's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I did also talk with Ross,
Oh,
and
that's
about
brilliant.
a year before his tragic, demise.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I also wanted to show kind of this was 1990,
please.
1996. This is Death Realm magazine. Um,
Oh
and this
yeah.
was right Death Realm magazine. I interviewed Poppy for this magazine, and this is how long ago it was. This was well, so this really takes you back because this was a reference to the 1980 the 19 was it the 1985 World Horror Convention. It was the 1986 World Horror Convention because this took place in Eugene, Oregon. And the programming was like, get a load of this, okay? The midnight panel on SM Imagery and Horror with Krista Faust,
Oh
Caitlin R. Kiernan, right?
yeah.
And Brian Hoge, right?
Oh, that would have been amazing.
That would
Oh,
have been amazing.
yeah.
And so this was the winners of the Death Realm Awards, So we're talking about like let's say Clive Barker, of course, the great Clive Barker was given the award for Living Legend, of course. Living
Makes
Legend,
sense.
great man. Best novel with the Safety of Unknown Cities by Lucy Taylor.
Oh, that's
And
a book I don't know. I may have to
um,
find that.
I actually have a hardcover edition of it. It was put out by John Palin, who's no longer, I believe, who's no longer with us. I believe it was John Palin who, yes, absolutely John Palin. And so, yeah, she cleaned up. Tom Piccarelli is no longer with us. Harlan Ellison is no longer with us.
Oh,
Damn.
I know. Uncle
Yeah,
Harlan.
Uncle Harlan. And so this was, I actually, in the previous year, I interviewed Poppy at the World Horror Convention in Atlanta, where I've also met, Caitlin or Kiernan for the first time, and
Oh,
also, I was spent some time with my friend Nancy, Nancy Kilpatrick. Um, yeah. And we were, I was, it was just me, Thomas Roche, and then Nancy Kilpatrick, and we were watching this panel with Caitlin R. Kiernan, right? And I wonder if it was like Krista Faust, Nancy Collins, and Poppy Z. Bright. Like that's just like the dream team of all time.
oh, it would
That's the
be
dream
sure.
team. And
Absolutely.
and um Nancy Collins was kind of rambling in her southern way, but Caitlin is also I mean, she's was born in Dublin, but she lives in Alabama,
She does in Birmingham, from what I
In
understand.
Birmingham, where she works for as a vertebrate paleontologist for the University of Alabama.
I've always wanted to meet her. Her
Yes,
and Krista and Poppy, all three of them, always want to meet them. They're high up in my realm, they're muses to me.
they're certainly brilliant people.
Yes.
I am have I know. I mean, I'm I wouldn't say close friends with Caitlin, but I certainly get a lot of love, and she gave me some really good advice, some of the best advice that I've ever had, which was like I was thinking that I maybe wanted to be published by Subterranean because it just has a mythic resonance for me, right? They
Oh,
published,
sure.
they published all like the like wrong things and and Plastic Jesus
Oh,
and
yeah.
these
Hmm.
these these books. I mean, to me that they're precious objects.
They're wonderful books, sure.
Right. I just thought, wouldn't it be awesome if I was published by Subterranean Press? Maybe it just had the idea of the cachet, the resonance of being associated with Subterranean Press. But I asked Caitlin, and she said, "I've only ever, I'm no, I'm not going to recommend you to it. Not because, not because I don't believe you, but believe in you, but because they're so picky and they're so. And she says the only person I've ever recommended is Sonia Taffy. And so I was like, okay, well,
Hmm.
I'm friends with Sonia Taffy, but what was my point? That and she said, build your own name, build your own name. So it's like, okay, so I'll go back to trying to build Nocturnicorn books instead of trying to be a subterranean press author. And this just kind of this mentality of focusing on my brand. I always want to promote other people. And she was like, no, man, you got to promote yourself. And the more I've done that, the more I've sort of using the law of attraction. I've gotten so many almost, it seems like miraculous results as a result of just say believing in myself. And then I got that incredible blurb from Anna Tambor, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
who's one of our biggest writers. I mean, she's like a legend, right?
she
Just a
is. She
legend.
is.
I was just blown away. It's like, really, really? So I was just so honored, and thank you, Anna Tambor. Okay, thank you
Yeah,
for that
dig it.
incredible blurb, the incredible thing you wrote about me. I mean, it's from the heart. It's from the heart. I respect you so much.
Sure enough.
This was my interview with Poppy Z. Bright, and this was appeared in 1986, 1996.
Yeah.
And this was J.K. Potter, of course, did the photographs, and this is the lovely Mr. Bright.
Yes, there
And
he is. There he
yes,
is.
in it's sort of a grimy, industrial, burned out setting, looking hauntingly gorgeous. And so 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 that was this. So I was, talking back and forth, and sometimes Pompey would call me up, and we would have these long conversations about William Burroughs, mostly about William Burroughs,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and drugs and other such shenanigans, right?
Sure.
And so then I was also okay because Craig Spector, Craig Spector, um, was living in Pasadena at the time, and he told me, okay, in this, if Craig Spector tells you to do something, it's not a question. He's sort of maybe because I was so young at the time, I was so he was such a monumental figure, and he still is a monumental figure, and he's a very incredible person, and he's dealing with stage 4 cancer
Oh.
right now. So I just have enormous respect for him. He said you have to check out this person I'm working with, this friend of mine, Krista Faust.
Mm.
You have to
Hmm.
talk to Krista Faust. I was like, I never, and he started reading from one of her stories, over the phone. It's like he would call me up at like odd hours and this was Craig Spector. He was sort of like very, very intense guy because he's Russian.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, Krista Faust, huh? Well, I found out that she was living with David J. Scow at the time, and they were in a relationship at the time. And so I guess I called her up, and I just what I actually did sort of an email back and forth to, and that was published in Carbon 14 magazine. And then I wasn't aware that Poppy had read that. Well, of course but of course, why wouldn't he, right?
Oh
And
sure, sure. They're
so,
friends
so
from what I know.
very, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so then he actually, because I got that the Purple Prose newsletter, or the
Oh,
Purple
I
Prose
did too.
newsletter.
Sure. Loved
You're
it.
right. And it was just incredible. And the postcards, right? The postcards
Mhm.
with the
Yeah.
with like the Kali and all the Damba and and such like. And but then I was like blown away that he actually excerpted my interview with Krista in Purple Prose. Not only that, but it was the same issue. It was the same issue. This was a year before William S. Burroughs actually died,
Sure.
but Poppy Z. Bright was kind of a little bit wanting to fuck his corpse.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have that chapbook. Sure,
Yeah,
sure. I have that
and,
chapbook.
and
Sure.
that was in, it was sort of like, well, at the age of 83, William S. Burroughs is dead, which is like, you're just using that as an excuse. Man, he's not dead. This is the transgressive genius of Poppy Z. Bright, right? And so I was like, oh, Poppy Z. Bright, you're up to some shenanigans.
Oh sure.
William S. Burroughs is not dead. I see what you did there.
I'm looking forward to his essays about Stephen King and any more writing he can do. I mean, like I said,
Yeah,
I hope he's able to. And I said
yeah,
nothing but love and respect. He's, like I said, one of
uh,
my muses.
yeah. And so when I was casting about for people to be in, to write for the junk merchants too, I was like, well, obviously Poppy Z. Bright. So I contacted, Billy Martin, and I said, would you allow me to republish that piece, R.I.P.?
Oh,
And he was like, oh yes, of course. And
ha,
so then I was like, now that we're talking, because we've known each other off and on since the 90s, I was like,
sure.
would you write me an introduction? Right?
Oh,
And I
cool.
was like, Okay. And what he did was he did this. It was actually okay. This is really really funny because it was a cut up. He cut up several Wikipedia articles. One about gay sex, one about Edgar Rice Burroughs, I think, and one about William S. Burroughs, and then but it's I actually have it right here. I'm going to okay, folks. Okay, you're going to get a little taste
Oh,
of magic of magic. Okay.
definitely looking forward to read this book. I mean, as soon as it comes out, I'm buying one. There it
Well,
is.
you will get your contributor's copy, of
Ah, I
course.
still buy one. You still got to support. You got to support the community, man.
Okay.
Got to support.
So, so this was actually Caitlin pointed this out to me. All right. So it's called Introduction Facts About Mr. Burroughs, which sounds
Hmm.
so formal, which is hilarious. Okay. This cut-up introduction uses sentences from the Wikipedia entries on William S. Burroughs, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and anal sex. What? Okay, so I'm going to just read. Oh boy, I'm just going to read the first sentence, and this is what. Okay, so Caitlin Kiernan shared with me. Okay, the Burroughs crater on Mars was named in his honor after his death. And Caitlin pointed out that it was Edgar Rice Burroughs, not William S. Burroughs. So it starts out with some shenanigans.
Well, what's the difference? One Burroughs or another. I mean, he also invented the adding machine.
He did his ancestor perfected the lever for the adding machine, which involved um, kind of embedding the lever in a kind of a machine oil, so it wouldn't be all jerky all over the place. It was a nice, easy sort of pull.
Oh, so it works with anal then.
Hey now! Oh my gosh!
You didn't realize what you were walking into there. Okay.
You know who's really into anal sex? Okay, the Norwegians. Okay, so
I've heard that.
I wasn't going to talk about this.
No, I opened
Norwegian
up a can of Crisco, it seems.
on your back or on your belly. Okay, so there's this band in Oslo
Hmm.
called Matter Mortem.
Oh, okay.
Matter Mortem, and as a fan of the darker kind of music, I think that you would really appreciate that they're more rock and roll than they are metal. Agneta, she has one of those Norwegian names. She's Norwegian, so
Sure.
It's Agneta. Okay, it's my friend Agneta,
Oh, sure. Like that.
and Agneta, and she, well, she works as a sort of a translator too, sort of
Ah,
English works. But oh yeah, why I can't believe I'm talking about this, right? So so you know, I went I visited Oslo for basically for two reasons. First, Metal Maniacs, and also Zero Tolerance magazine,
mm.
because I was working for both of them at the time, and I thought, well, so at the last minute, I kind of got uh, I got, you know, an entrance into the Inferno Festival, which took place over the Easter week in 2006, I believe. And I was just kind of a little bit downhearted at the time because I'd written actually one book for New Line Cinema Black Flame Books, which is called Jason X Death Moon, where I used a lot of they gave me free reign chicken to do whatever the hell I wanted because I was close friends with the guy who was the editor and co-publisher of it, Jason J. Slater. And so the more crazy shit I did, the more they loved it. And they really enabled me to do a lot of William S. Burroughs cut-up stuff with Jason, Voorhees. And it's unique. It's
Oh,
a
that makes sense totally. Because what better to do cut up than with slashers? Certainly,
Yes, whatever better to do cut up than with the slashers, darling.
certainly.
I love I love your accent. It's great.
Thank
With the slashers, darling. Um,
you.
but the so I did, and I went to town, and it was wildly inappropriate for the genre and for the series, and I took a lot of heat for it. It was a sequel to the Nancy Kilpatrick um, novel, Planet of the Beast, which was a sequel itself to Pat Cadigan's novel, Jason X.
Okay.
And then Nancy saw what I did with some of her characters, was horrified, righteously so. And so I killed one of her characters. I'm sorry, Nancy Kilpatrick. Would you ever forgive me? I killed your characters. I didn't know. I didn't know.
Oh, got to kill those darlings, darling.
Darling, right? And yes, I did, but she had to revive them. And some of the reviewers have pointed out that her her version of my plot makes much more sense than my version of my plot. It being what it is, it's still a kind of a minor cult classic. So I was commissioned again to write a book. Okay, get this, get this. It's
Got it.
called Final Destination. We've all seen the films, right? Final Destination, Wipeout. The big the big idea. This is like the what do you call it? High concept.
Yeah.
It's like The Craft meets Blue Crush meets Final Destination. So it's like you've seen The Craft, you've seen the surfer movie, Blue Crush, is about a surfing competition in Hawaii. And then they were like, oh yeah, and there's these goth girls from England who go to Hawaii and they and it's sort of, and then they're picked off by death, and there's this a sniper from the Afghanistan war who somehow is also picking them off, and I think there was some cocaine involved with this decision-making process,
Well, why not? I mean, you
but
throw it all in there, man.
throw it all in there. And so I was like, are you serious? Okay, I can do this, but I'm going to have to do a lot of research.
So
And
I'm just I guess I'm short circuiting. I'm just wondering, were the goth chicks like surfers, surfing goth witch types, and then
yes,
they're getting
yeah,
assassinated and
yeah,
oof,
yes, they were goth chicks. Okay, so they start out in London,
okay.
where our tale is set, and all of a sudden they're in Hawaii,
Ah,
and then they're in a surfing competition. So they're gothic, they're got, and then they're and then it's with and the surf, and so when I was signing Death Moon at Dark Delicacies in Hollywood with Marie Alexander, I think was there, and then Krista Faust comes in. And I was like, "Hey, Krista Faust, how's it going?" She says, "Fine." She says, I was like, do you talk to have you talked to Poppy recently?" "Oh, sure." And then I described, because I actually got them on board. I got Krista on board, and so she was like, and she wrote the Final Destination 3
mm.
novelization and Snakes on a Plane too. So
I
shout out to
remember that. I read that.
Krista Faust, yeah. And she's really good. And then I described the plot of this, and she eyes got wider and wider, and she says, I said, "They're goth chicks who surf," and she says, "Do they only surf at night?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess so. I guess so, right? They only surf at night." So
Oh,
I'd had to do so much research about surfing, about well, I mean, the only thing I knew about is goth music and goth culture, but surfing, and then Hawaii, and then Afghanistan, and the Afghanistan war was going on at the time. I was also teaching college, so in a very poor, lower socioeconomic area of LA, where there's a lot of gang activity and a lot of violence activity. And so I kept having to go over their deadlines, and finally they said, "Well, we're yanking your commission." And so for years and years and years and years and years, I felt like I'd blown it. I utterly blown a chance to have this novel published by Black Flame Books. It's official tie-in. It would be my second thing with them. Now, I only recently discovered that they were that was a bunch of BS, because they really had a lot of financial mismanagement, and so they weren't going to publish the book. It's actually the product detail for Final Destination Wipeout is still on Amazon if you check it out. But it says on the cover, it says "not final cover," which
ah,
means they got their funding pulled right when they were about to publish my novel, and so it's become a kind of a famous lost media.
oh, sure. So do you have like a copy hanging around a galley, or do you have a PDF or a Word doc somewhere that you have of all this madness?
Maybe.
Oh, well,
I mean, there are people who would pay a lot of money for Final Destination Wipeout. Well, I
sure,
may I may release it next year. So we've spent a lot of time. I wanted to do some things, and I wanted to involve Pickles here.
sure.
I also wanted to do some reading. So I would like to, first of all, if Aaliyah, I'd like to read some things from Thunderstruck, and then I'd like to invite Dr. Dilworth to read her poems. And so, can we read a little from Thunderstruck, Aaliyah?
Sure.
Mhm. Yeah, we
Yeah,
can do that.
great.
Did you want me to start,
Oh
or
yeah,
do
yeah.
you want?
Please, yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to I can just read one of my poems that
Yeah.
um is in here if you want. Okay. Sure. Let's see. Do I want to do that one? Um, okay. Let's go to. I guess I'll do Surreal City because I know you like that one.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Okay. All right. with warm strokes making a clear course across a cool coast. The sun rises, making its impact here, shining, making us alive. Animals open their eyes. Some of them are dying down, some of them have gone to sleep, and some seldom sleep at all. I come from the nights without sleep,
Mm.
puzzled, but in one piece at least. The sun comes without conceal as I study and stray, cutting across the taboo as a trespasser. The sun comes shining again, telling me to wake up. I never slept. I hear new languages as I walk with fiery legs in the surreal city. Adults say the strangest things, but it takes courage just to speak. Neither you nor I are from around here, and we do things differently at home. So-
It's very
Yeah,
lovely. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. Oh,
It's
thank you
very
so much.
yeah, that's
Yay.
very lovely. I love how you're juxtaposing the imagery there and what you're saying. Oh, that ending's lovely. You did
Well,
that.
thank
Was
you so
lovely.
much. I
Certainly.
appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
it is a really beautiful poem, Aaliyah. See, I told
Aw,
you. I
thank
told
you.
you. Do you want to read another one?
I could. Well, I could do that one. That,
Looking very lovely today.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Very nice. So sweet. Okay. Well, how about I'll read Thunderstruck.
Yeah,
Okay. So this is one of the collaborative pieces by Sandy DeLuca, Alex S. Johnson, and myself, Aaliyah Celeste Williams. Okay. Mm.
and this
Serpent's
is and this
Rise.
is and this is available
Yes.
on Amazon
Yeah.
in Kindle and paperback form, and it's only like 13.99. It's like, it's free on for Kindle Unlimited, and it's like $3 for to buy it. So what are you waiting for?
I'll do
Let's
it as soon as I'm
let's
done here.
right, right.
Aw,
Oh yeah,
so
I mean
sweet.
I didn't mean you, but yeah. I mean,
Well,
well,
like I
we
said,
could,
you got to support. You got to support, man. So there
yeah,
it
yeah,
is.
yeah. I mean, we could send you a signed copy if you like.
Please, I'm
I,
sending you one of my
Okay,
Nostradamus. But there
okay.
you go.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, I'm gonna need to get one of
yeah,
your Nostradamus as well at some point here
Oh,
because I
certainly.
really want to. Very interested in that. Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and read that?
yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is Thunderstruck. Serpents writhe, bats ascend from a crumbling steeple, souls to rend. Many died there, trapped in gray black purgatory, slippery as dreams, glimpsed in pools of mercury. He's left behind a ladder of screams, skeletons piled high. His face is so pale and wan, WAN.
Yeah,
One.
Juan, yeah.
Hoping I said
One.
that right. Okay.
You did it.
His fingers make you die. We make love here, so passionate. Our coupling conjures the dead, cruel and lovely as your velvet eyes, around the thorn roses that lie between your thighs. Hell awaits. I'm thunderstruck, a captured slave, bereft of luck. It doesn't matter what my fate, I crave your kiss from its own sake. The way your body moves with the ghosts who haunt this place. We're all doomed to Hades, lords and ladies, to dark waters beneath the steeple, to the endless rush of your dark heart. Our lives are meaningless, our efforts feeble. The blade's so beautiful, glinting in moonlight. It cuts so deep, it cuts so right. Through scars of bad luck, I bleed, I'm thunderstruck. Ah, cool. I never actually read that one aloud before, so
Yeah.
Yeah, it just has so much
sounds good.
um it's so well, I attribute a lot of this to Sandy DeLuca. She's meant
Yeah, yeah.
she's a magician with language.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
It's
And
amazing.
a lot of these poems were kind of like a core. They started out with a core, a fragment, something she had written in 1998.
Yeah.
And
It's
then she asked me to help her finish. So we wrote this book in about 2 weeks.
Oh,
And then we brought Pickles on board, and she contributed some poems. And Aaliyah and I as well had written some lyrics, some actually doom lyrics, where we had some songs like Mistress of Graves and then Pontiff of
Pontiff
Shadows.
Shadows, yeah.
Could you talk about the Pontiff? Because I love this. This is part of like our dark romance, origin tale.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of fun to write because we were just kind of trashing on Pope and kind of, I don't know, casually talking, and we just sort of started. It was like one of our first collaborations, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And it just kind of happened out of nowhere, and um, we just started coming up with these like silly over the top. I don't know. It was kind of funny lyrics. I'm trying to find it. It's in this one, isn't it?
Oh
It's in
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Pontiff. Yeah, could you read the Pontiff? Because the Pontiff.
Yes.
And also I want to point out that the epigram that begins um this book is from a poem that is not included in the book called Blood Red. And I would like after this, I would like for Aaliyah to read the poem Blood Red if you can find it. If you can't find it, that's okay. It's
Okay.
her signature line, "No bitch, we ain't dead yet." Because we're undead, undead, undead,
Undead, undead, undead.
undead.
So, hold on. I'm finding Pontiff of Shadows here. Okay. All right. You want me to read this one?
Oh, hells yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is our doom metal song that me and Alex wrote, and uh, I think it's pretty awesome. I tend to credit Alex on this one a lot because I feel like you you did the most magic with it, but I we had fun
The
putting it
Pontiff.
together. Yeah. Okay. Pontiff of Shadows, you're living a lie. Prayers won't avail you. Now it's time to die. From the born from the shadow of Christ's crucifixion, unhallowed being, part real and part fiction. Buried in the deepest ground of hell, the cult you brought back your humanity's death knell. Pontiff of Shadows, Pontiff of Shadows, Pontiff of Shadows, Pontiff of Shadows. The educated classes hold black masses while the poor suffer. They, they tell them, get tougher. Tell them that everything will be okay. All you've got to do is pray to the pontiff and the mistress of graves. On your knees, if you please, their souls to enslave. Building his throne from the floor of hell, his bad eminence with extravagance. In a pool of seeping blood, he'll leave you. Don't mess around with the Pope of Evil. Pontiff of Shadows, you're living a lie. Prayers won't avail you. Now it's time to die.
Die.
oh,
Stiff with elation, he watched and masturbated as the papal hordes slaughtered political enemies. They tore at their flesh, wore their skin as a dress. The Pontiff of Shadows, his head is a gallows. Pontiff of Shadows, Pontiff of Shadows, Pontiff of Shadows. When he died, black smoke, black smoke belched forth. Hell is here, or so said the report when they published Hell's own catechism. blasphemous rites straight from the Vatican, did the sign of the inverted cross. The Pope's a dope, no better than a mob boss, covering up centuries of crime, suffering the children to come for sacrifice. Fight the real evil, said Sinead O'Connor. Convict the felon born of the devil's daughter. He's unreal, a piece of Francis Bacon, lashed his heels in hell. His eyes God's taking. Pontiff of shadows, you're living a lie. Prayers won't avail you when it's your time to die. Pontiff of shadows, pontiff of shadows, pontiff of shadows. Yes.
So I was trying to be my dying bride.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was like, so what it's missing is the massive stony doom chords behind it.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
somebody needs to record this.
You could convince me.
Really?
Well, like I said, you can convince me. I'm convincible. You
Okay.
can convince me.
Okay, so I think we've just made our argument.
Well, sure. I mean, I'm up to doing that and trying. So I just need to get the book, and we'll go from there.
Okay, that sounds like a plan, Stan. Okay, so let's see. Dr. Dilworth, um,
Yeah.
would you please read whatever you like?
Well, like I say, I always read three things. And anymore, I read one poem by Baudelaire at least, and this is from my bad translation of Bad Flowers, and this is number 11 from Spleen and Ideal, Bad Luck, Le Guignon, and I dedicate it to someone I never knew her, but I feel like I know her. Her name is Nana G. Long. I lived for a while in Goldfield, and she is buried there in the cemetery there, and that's one of the basis of one of my Goldfield stories because life had become a burden for her, and she ended up taking her own life. Um, and I give her another alternative in a story that I wrote about Goldfield because I have a whole bunch of stories that are like steampunk, gothic, westerns because Goldfield's an interesting place. We'll just say that, but that's another conversation. But this is my Baudelaire translation of Bad Luck, number 11, for Nana G. Long. To carry a weight so heavy, like Sisyphus, you must have courage, having a heart ready to work. Art lasts, but time is short. Far away from the celebrity cemeteries in a lonely graveyard, my heart, like a muffled drum, beats out funeral marches. Many precious jewels lay buried, devastated and forgotten, far, far away from miners. Many flowers pour out regret, their sweet perfume like a secret, in the depths of solitude.
Yes, that's
Very
beautiful,
nice.
beautiful.
That's one of my Baudelaires.
Cool.
So,
Nice.
and also one of some of the things I've been working on over a while is basically being a queer person, being a trans woman. I don't, and I am who I am. I talk about my body, and I wrote a whole series of poems about my body and how it's changed and who it is and how it makes me me. So, I'm going to read two poems from that. I haven't really done anything with those yet because I'm still figuring out how to do it and what to do and all that. But this one, since you've got me on a certain wavelength, we're going to call it Waves. And in fact, this is the name of the poem, and the subtitle is Toes. And I'll say, Aaliyah, you'll understand it. Alex won't. You'll get it. Waves, toes. It comes up from the bottom, starts at the tip of your toes, always the toes. At a certain moment, you feel it grow and blossom up and up through all your body, all upwards, steadily, in waves of various sizes until it lands and lingers in your head and out of your lips with a happy sigh or a moan and a smile. Though it can build up again from toe tips to a higher point, another point perhaps, as a laugh or a giggle, a startled breath perhaps, depending on who is there. How it goes, how it grows, how it blossoms, flower buds open, as if it were a red, red rose which came and grew out of your own heart from the tips of your own toes.
Yeah.
Nice. Very, very,
I,
very
I,
good.
I think what you're getting at, although I am a man, but I have read people like Julia Kristeva, Helen Sixou, and in the French, of course, they're always talking about jouissance.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Right. So yeah, I know what you guys are getting at. I mean, I know this is something that a man experiences differently.
Oh, very much so. Very
But
much so.
I'm always think of the Helen Sixou's, L'Oreille de la Méduse, right?
Oh, sure.
Right. Yeah.
Well, definitely. You get the picture. That's the idea. And I'm sure Aaliyah
Yeah.
knows a little better. I mean, if I may be so bold to say you
No,
know
no, no,
a
of
bit
course.
more. There
Oh,
you go.
I
yes.
think I think I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I'm not, I don't feel right insulted or anything like that.
Of
This is,
course. Of course.
our plumbing is a little more, straightforward, right?
Certainly it is. Certainly it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So, and that collection where I'm putting together the books, the poems about my body and various things is called Viscera, and I'd like to put it out soon. And that's one of the I hope to put that and my novel Star out in 2025. That's one of my hopes,
Okay.
and I hope to have this out. And this is one of the poems in it. It's called Understanding and Knowing. The subtitle is Elaine Self, l'art, die Kunst, art, die Liste, yes through. Elaine, the word for art in the language of my people I'll never know. Self, in the language of my people I can't pronounce. The words of my great grandmothers and fathers who turned their back on ancient lands and words for hope of a better life in a different place. I don't know the word for art in the language of the Native American in me, my lost people, an unknown connection. I feel it deep within, so deeply I almost dare not say it or write it. L'art, in the language I chose and love, took a new name and found a place in. Chez moi, en français où j'habite. L'arte, in the language I found on la calle, as I grew and learned and became me. Die Kunst, in the language I struggled for, wished I could use more, make a part of myself. What I want to know more of and be more of. Können, the root, meaning to know. On a Platz on Berlin with a typewriter, writing spontaneous poetry. Ars, in the language I desired to be able to read the poetry from Catullus, Ovid, Virgil, Horace, to understand what all the words meant behind the words. Art, in English, who took it as its own from others, Latin and French, ars, arte, at the cost of so much, probably too much. Die Liste, the ancient and hidden word in English, the word for cunning, guile, craft, and art. Just like Ystreux in Welsh, they had a word for it too. Understanding and knowing, which is what art is in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Awesome. Very
Yes.
good. Thank
Yes.
you. I enjoyed so much. So
All right.
cool.
I got some stuff here, and I'm just going to read a few things.
Sure.
And so, okay, so you know, these are all available on Amazon. And so this is called Skull Vinyl. This
Yeah.
is also collected at the Widener Library at Harvard University. It's considered that good. And The Brides of Doom, The Doom Hippies, Volume 2. And I'm going to read the last piece in it in Brides of Doom is called you'll laugh. Let's get fucked up. It's very free translation of a poem by Charles Baudelaire, which
Mhm.
is in the original is Enivrez-vous. It's usually traditionally translated as get drunk, but
Hmm.
I think that poetry translation evolves with the time, and it's that's been done, right? The
Sure.
translation get drunk has been done. Why not try something or even get high? So this is the 21st
Mhm.
century. Let's get fucked up.
Yes.
You gotta get fucked up. That's the secret. The mandate of them all. Do it right now before you lose your nerve. Why on earth do you need to feel time club your shoulders, thrust his knees against your spine, and push, making you eat dirt? Who deserves that? I say get fucked up and stay that way. You know, how you ask? Seriously, dude, the vino, the poetry, nobility, whatever you like, but you gotta get
Fucked up.
fucked up.
Sure.
And if it so happens you wake up reclining in style on a palace porch, or even in a ditch clogged with old condoms and the feverish dick smell, Christ, between your own four walls, the buzz gone or will on its way, as the wind, the wave, the star, the bird, the clock, anything that flies from pain, anything that groans from oppression, the rollers, the singers, the sinners, animals with beaks, mammals that squeak. What's the timestamp, Kenneth? Ask the wind, the wave, the star, the bird, and the clock, especially the clock, this la cloche. What time is it exactly? And the wind, the wave, the star, the bird, the clock will surely say it's time to get fucked up.
Fucked up.
Don't be a victim, a slave to time. Get fucked up. Stay fucked up. On the vino, the poetry, nobility, whatever. So that is not an authorized translation of Enivrez-vous.
There's no authorized translation of Baudelaire. I'll just say
I
that.
know, right? Yes. Um, okay. So there's some poems in Skull Vinyl that um this that are kind of definitely very much fetishistic. And I'm not going to read those because I'm a little not embarrassed so much, but it's kind of personal. And so let me see. Okay. Oh, right. So this was called Little Bo Peep Show. And it was actually inspired by a lecture that I attended at UC Davis many years ago. It was actually more of a presentation with this woman whose name I've forgotten, but she's sort of she's a major artist, um, Tamara Blanken, something I believe was Tamara Tamara Blanken, something like that. And the professor who's giving the lecture, it was a basically it was about Marcel Duchamp, but it was
Hmm.
also about Kabbalah,
Mm.
and there was a lot of sort of esoteric references. And one of the women who was a student of this professor, art professor, made a pun about Lil Bo Peep Show. And so I've always thought I need to do something with that. So this is called Lil Bo Peep Show. I saw this woman, a professor's manufacturer, without going into nostalgia, really liked the whole unusual Duchamp machine. She enacted transplanted. It was at a time I thought bachelors were the shit. As long as they brought the noise and played prepared piano, I put my nose in the Lil Bo Peep Show, and they handed it back smelling like a violet organ. when I wanted to blow it, it exploded like a penny arcade of dreams.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
Dig it.
thank
Cool.
you. Thank you.
Yes.
So I was thinking of not Lava, but was the other one
Au
Orebur.
revoir.
Orebur. Yeah, right. The scent organ, right?
Yes,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, I recognize that immediately. That was
yes.
brilliant.
Thank you so much. I really
Sure.
appreciate your kind words.
Yeah.
Um, so this one is called The Theater Wanders Nightly. The theater wanders nightly, collapsing people in jars of makeup. Faster than chess and colder than an explosion in the major arcanum. All the cards on the table are not what they appear. Butterfly ripples ride like Godiva in arabesques of satanic bondage. Loop gravitation on a green gold field, nebulous striptease, bump and grind of angelic whores. The tapestry of crystal mobs marries threads of the sideshow. Do you take this freak? Etc. The tent is a wilderness where samsara plays the useful wolves like a string instrument. The scrim collapses in a riddle of dimensions where panicked citizens strike the conditional drum to hammer chaos back into its hole. Where it may go softly, or spit a machine of devilish device into the logical, the sane, and the polite. Their caravans of eagle feet sucking the revolver of dreams. Naturalissimum et perfectissium opus est generare tale quale ipsum est. With the patience of centuries, the theater enacts itself in rites of the falcon-headed god, the Lord begetting a horde of red-haired monsters from the growling beard of the final flood, laughs at the simple morality of earth and drops the curtain soundlessly. That's the poem. It's
That's it.
a lot
Very
of
nice.
Philip Lamantia. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Philip Lamantia.
Yes, I recognize him.
Yeah,
I see that. I see that, and just the references and just the Latin bit. Really like that. That's lovely. You
thank
write
you.
brilliant poetry, man.
Thank you so much. That really, that's from my heart because you understand, you understand where I'm coming from. It's one thing if somebody said, if somebody paid me a compliment, I was just like, of course I'm humbled by anybody paying attention to my work, but as somebody who knows where I'm coming from, it
Hmm.
means all the more to me.
I
And I
mean, I
got
could.
to read, yeah, just one final poem.
Please.
It's called White Light. Um, and this is kind of, well, I was thinking of Shelley and they wrote about Keats, Keats, that the poem he wrote about Keats, where it was Adonais, right?
Sure.
Who mourns for
Sure.
Adonais? White light, viewed through the glaze of the white sensorium, everything becomes equal. The tigers overlap in waves of liquid gold.
Ooh.
The horses thunder on my rooftop, right? all across America, things are slanting strange, and we are not as we were. When we walked on the beach at sunset, it was the equinox. There, the shadows are violet, and epic priests have raided the Cathedral of Dreams. I ate a fruit on my way in. It scorched my mouth like the black gold of alchemy.
Mm.
The hands of the clock just chipped me away, and I am scattered sunsets, every one a god.
Oh, yeah. All right. Dig it. That's lovely too. I dig
Thank you.
that.
Thank you
The
so
imagery
much.
is so enrapturing, and that's lovely. I think I do need to read some more of that. I mean, because I just like the way you're using the words and just the violet and just the colors. Yeah. Oh, thank you. That was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. Philip Lamantia,
Hmm.
you know, I bought some of his poetry books. I think this was many, many, many years ago because I read a book called Whitman's Wild Children by the late Neely Cherkovsky
Yeah.
or Neely Cherry as he was known. And this was one of the when I was attending Long Beach State. And this is one of the most amazing and influential books that I ever read in my life. And it changed how I approached writing. And because this was a poet who was a sort of in his own way, he was like a prodigy, right? He was mentored by Charles Bukowski himself,
Yeah.
right? And
Uh,
and he and who with whom he edited like a poetry scene of some sort. And and so it's all for those who haven't read Whitman's Wild Children. It's the most amazing book because he not only he was close friends with all of these poets, but he actually they're sort of like it's an homage, a tribute, an interview. It's a rapturous book. I mean,
mm,
I would read the chapters over and over again, especially the one about Philip Lamantia. It was just I imbibe it and I was just wanting to be there on the streets of San Francisco where they drank too many cappuccinos, and the sidewalk starts vibrating and sort of warping, and they're talking about Rimbaud.
yeah.
To be there, to be a fly on the wall or whatever, to be a flower of a Rimbaldian flower that so regardé, right?
Oh, yeah. That would be amazing. It would have been an
And,
amazing place.
yeah,
Time.
and so that's the next best thing to it. So I bought some books off of Amazon. They were like $20, but I read them over and over and over. These like out of print poetry collections, and I just sort of try to live within them. I try to live within these poems and inhabit the words and look at exactly what he was doing. Because when I see a poet like Rimbaud or anybody for that matter achieve a certain effect and achieve a certain effect on my nervous system, I think, how did they achieve this? And with Rimbaud, it's almost a science, I feel. It's almost a science like L'Alchimie du Verbe, right?
Hmm.
Um, where and that almost a magical thing where I think the last line is ouvert, right?
Yes, it
Open,
is.
right? Ouvert,
Ouvert.
open,
Ouvert.
right?
Yeah.
And that's something that you can only get by actually knowing French and also reading it aloud. Then you see,
Yes.
oh, the openness is a key. And it makes me think of like Gnosticism, right? It's a
Yes.
mystical idea. You're going through the looking glass or whatever you will. And for me, like discovering La Mantilla was like that. It was like, oh my gosh, you can use language as a kind of not just mimesis, but you can actually create reality. You can import things from dreams, magical, magical archetypal kind of almost like creating magical incantations that you embed within a formal structure of language. And so then it's like you've got these almost like spells. And then when somebody reads it, it uploads in their system, and then
Yes.
it's like a drug or something.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, let me see if I can figure out how to do that.
Hmm.
Right. I studied sort of like his grammar and his syntax, and it was like, okay, so and then I took some, it was that was not that's not a it's not a cut up. But what I did was I took Carl Jung, I took um the guy who wrote Shamanism, um um Elias Mercayede, something like that, right? And then I would sort of like take passages, take them out. I would kind of cut them up with a bit of Tristan Zara, and then I would fold them back into a little bit of Rimbaud. But it's all me. I mean, all the images, all the words, everything is me.
Yeah.
But I would sort of extract and pull out like a line from shamanism or a line from, and I wanted to, and this is also something I did with Death Moon too. I wanted to sort of create language that worked at the most primeval level,
Sure.
so that and this is what Burroughs was trying to do, to completely cut through your rational mind to get there before
Mm-hmm.
the jaws of logic clamp down and say, you can't do this, that doesn't make sense. And sort of like to get through, sort of like you have this window where you can blow up the Death Star, which is control.
Yes.
And then you're like you're Luke Skywalker of of poetry, right?
Essentially, sure.
You know, that would be wild. And we should make a documentary. You're a filmmaker.
Well,
Um,
I'm sure we can sort something out. We have time. We have money.
yeah,
Maybe.
we
I don't
have
know. We'll figure it out.
yeah, what if we made a documentary like like with all of the people in like the Burroughs book, for example, and if we can visit them in our home or do it by Zoom, and if we could have them read their selection. I mean, I know that I couldn't interest Caitlin in this, but it's only because she doesn't make any public appearances. She's shut down, and she gave me her last interview ever. So that is what it is, and I don't think Billy Martin's going to do it, but some other people, maybe we could get Jarbo. Maybe we
Sure.
could get, I mean, Carrie Chrome, or, definitely we just had Tara Vanflower on the show. We could get Nancy Kilpatrick, and definitely who is Lorelei Shannon, right? Amelia Mangan, Seb Dubinsky we had on the show, right? He's amazing, right? Do you know Seb?
I've heard the name before.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
recognize him. Sure, I know
He
who he is.
he's his new book has an introduction by Mike Moorcock, who's like mentored him. So we
Hmm.
could, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but why not? Because I would do it if I could.
I get it. Sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
here we are.
Here we are, right.
Here we are, and here it is. And I'm going to confess, I have to eat dinner.
Oh no, 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 yes. I mean we're
We could keep on talking all night.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. And I'd like
we're
to talk again. I'd be very
yeah,
happy
yeah,
to
yeah,
talk to you
yeah.
both again.
Yes. Yeah, we should set something up
Sure.
for another time. So it's been really lovely to have you,
Thank you for
uh,
having me.
Ms. Dilworth, and
Thank you. Parker coming up.
And so yeah, and definitely we'll catch up by Facebook.
Yes.
And so yeah, so this has been another episode of the Small Bear and Pickles show with your host Alex S. Johnson and my lovely co-host Ms. Aaliyah Celeste Williams, and our guest has been Dr. Jacqueline Dilworth,
Yes.
who's a DJ, a poet, an author, translator of Baudelaire and of Nostradamus, and just a wonderful human being. So we'll be back with maybe more Jacqueline Dilworth. Okay, until next time, this is Alex S. Johnson for Nocturnicorn Books and Small Bear and Pickle Show, signing off.